Hey everybody, this video is meant to help you with special education students in your classroom. I know we've had several questions here at the beginning of the year of how to use the spreadsheets that we provided to you. And so the focus points here are going to be the following. We're going to first talk about tracking accommodations, why we're doing that and how we're going to do it. Secondly, we'll talk about some important adjustments that we're going to be making to assessment accommodations with all of our special education students. Then we're going to talk about how to schedule small group testing. And then finally, we'll talk about some helpful tips that you can use to efficiently organize your accommodation sheets so that you're tracking this stuff in a way that best suits you. All right, so next let's talk about why we're tracking accommodations. First and foremost, we need to make sure that we're collecting data on any accommodation that a kid has in an IEP to see if these accommodations are actually working. So over the course of time, if we're successfully collecting this data and we notice that a specific accommodation is not working, we can alter that in the student's next IEP. Secondly, and this is equally important, we need to make sure that we have a running record of the accommodations that we're using to prove that we're meeting the legal requirements of an IEP. You may recall last year we had legal counsel come in and present about the legal ramifications of meeting a student's IEP. And so the importance of dotting our I's and crossing our T's is critical to make sure that we're taking care of a student's needs. Next, let's talk about how to track these accommodations. First of all, at a minimum, you're going to want to update the accommodations and how you're meeting them on at least a weekly basis. Secondly, you're going to want to use a notation style that best suits you. And we'll talk about that right now. So, this is a sample spreadsheet of a student. You receive these if you have a student in your class. And before I show you how to make notations and options for that, the one thing you need to make sure you do right away is make a copy of this file so that we're not all putting our data on this same spreadsheet. That way, it's going to get cluttered and hard to read if we're all putting data on the same page. So all you're going to do is go up here to File and go to Make a Copy. And it's going to give you an option of what to name that copy. So you can call it the student's name, and you can put your name or the hour that you have the kid. Whatever you want to name it is fine. Once you name it, then it's going to make a copy, and it'll pop up on the screen for you. So you can see my rename title here, and I have all these accommodations. Next, you're going to notice that we have accommodations organized by categories. So we have a seating category, a checking for understanding category, all the way down to an assessment category. So in this case, we'll start with seating, and we're going to talk specifically about how you can track these. The seating close to instructor one is pretty easy. You don't need to update this one on a weekly basis. This one is one of those things where you can just put see seating chart if you made it on Monday. You'll notice that in this case, the text didn't all quite fit in that box. So what we can do is we can go to the text wrapping option, which is up here, and click that one, and it'll wrap to make sure it stays in that same column. If by chance, week 4, you make a new seating chart, you can go down here to week 4. You can click on that week and you can add the new seating chart. So here's another example. This one's a little bit more difficult. It says to provide frequent check-ins with the student to assure that the student's on task, basically. Right? So for me, I might go in here and update these on a weekly basis. I might do it every Friday, every Thursday. It's Thursday, I go in here. And I know on Monday, we did an activity where the students had to work with a partner and write a paragraph, an expository paragraph, and I checked in with the student twice. I can initial this if I want, SL, that shows that I did it. If I want to be more detailed, I can put checked with student 3 times. Again, we can text wrap this so it fits in the column. If I want to just put a check mark that I did it, that's fine too. If by chance on Tuesday you know that you didn't get to it, well, that's okay, just leave it blank. We want to be accurate with the data that we're collecting. Next, an example is have student restate the directions. You can just put your initials if you want. You can put when they restated the directions, what the activity was. If you want to be more specific, you can say writing student restated. Or again, you can put a check mark, your initials, something that shows that we're paying attention to these accommodations and that we're meeting the needs of the student. Another one here is providing opportunities for sensory breaks, 1 break per class period. If a student doesn't need the break, on Monday they didn't take one, that's okay. On Tuesday, if they got a break, you can put a check. You could even see student checked in with counselor. That's another option if you sent them down because they needed a break and they wanted to talk to their counselor for a quick moment. You've met that accommodation. Down here for assessments, providing a study guide at least 3 days before the assessment. If you have an assessment on Friday of this week and you gave the study guide on Tuesday, you can put a check. If you emailed the assessment study guide to the student, you can put emailed if you want to be more specific. Whatever you want that suits your needs and the way you want to track these accommodations in these boxes. All tests and quizzes read aloud in a small group setting. If you scheduled a small group assessment on a Wednesday, you can put with Gail, and we're all set. So again, we want to use this in a way that meets our needs and that consistently tracks the data. We want to make sure that we're doing it at least on a minimum of a weekly basis. And if you have any more questions about specific accommodations and how to record that, I would recommend that you see the student's caseload teacher. You can even ask me as well. The best place to start is the student's caseload teacher because they know that student best and they can best assist you. So let's go back in here and let's talk about the next piece, and that's assessment accommodations. We decided that there's certain assessment accommodations like reduced questions, fewer options and multiple choice and word banks that don't really reflect what students are going to see on a test like the SAT or the M-STEP or a district common assessment. So we're going to get rid of these. We're going to make addendums. Our special ed teachers are going to do that with all their students in the caseload to eliminate these. And in place of those accommodations, we're going to make sure that we have assessment accommodations that look and feel like what students will have with the SAT and the M-STEP. Examples include extended time, small group assessment, read aloud, whatever best fits for that student. But again, you need to understand that that's going to happen. So eventually, once those addendums are made, we're going to eliminate these types of options where we're reducing options and multiple choice and we're putting fewer questions. So that's an FYI for you. Next, we're going to talk about how to schedule small group assessments. First of all, we want to do it 1 week in advance because we have a lot of students, a lot of teachers, but we only have one Gale that can do this. So you need to make sure you're timely with this. If you try to schedule something a day before, Gail's probably not going to be able to meet your needs. So let's make sure that we do that. Next, we're going to schedule it on the Google Calendar. I'll show you how to do that, and then we'll follow up with an email to Gail to make sure that she got it. So the calendar, everyone's received sharing privileges for this. When you look at your calendar, you'll have different calendars. I have my personal calendar. I have different other options, but there's a read aloud calendar that you've all been shared with. You want to make sure that that's turned on. So, when you click it and you see that it's not colored in anymore, that means you don't have it on. So you go on, now it's back available. And what we can do, if we want to schedule it right here, here's the option. You'll notice that when I pop this up in this appointment slot, it's on my calendar to start. So I'm going to hit the arrow, and I'm going to find the calendar that I need to use, which is read alouds for content area tests. I'm going to click create the event. You'll notice when I did that, I forgot to put the title. So I can go in here and put math test and the names of the students. Bill, Jamie, and this is going to be 3rd hour with Gail. However you want to do that so that Gail knows the students that are coming, the hour that you're doing it. Make sure you put it in the right time slot I put this one at 3 to 4 p.m., so I'm going to have to adjust this. It's going to actually be at 9 a.m. I can go back in here and put the time that these students are going to be coming down with Gail. Then we save that, and now it's accurately in there. Gail will be able to see that, and then we'll follow up by going into our email and just shooting her an email. So that's that. If you have more questions about how to do that, you can talk to Gail. You can talk to one of the special ed caseload teachers, and they can help you out with that. But again, we want to make sure that we're timely when we schedule these. Finally, we're going to talk about some things that you can do to organize your accommodation sheets. First of all, you need to make sure that you make a copy of these sheets so that you have your own individual page. And I talked about what that looked like a little earlier in this presentation. I'll go over that again in a moment. Secondly, you want to create a folder in your drive for easy access. So let's take a look at this. Let's go back to our sample student. This is the original document. We're going to go in. We're going to make a copy of it. We're going to call this the student's name, third hour. Now we have our copy that's being made. And here it is. The next thing we want to do is we want to make sure we have in our drive a folder. So here's all my folders. I can create a new one by going to new folder. We're going to call this Long Special Ed 2015. That is now in here, and I have this folder. So when I go back to my sample student, I can move this document into that folder like that. So again, you're going to go, let me X that out and show you again, File, move to Folder, and we're going to find the folder that we're using. There it is, and I'm going to click Move, and it moves it to that folder. So now it's going to be easier for us to find those things. When we go into our drive, we're not going to have to randomly search for things. We know that it's in this specific folder. Next, this piece is important. Each week after week 1 has to be adjusted to ensure the accommodations are accurate. When I made all these documents, in the interest of time, I didn't do every week like this. I just made copies of each week, and you'll see week 1 with this student looks like this, but week 2 does not. So we need to make sure that we have the right accommodations in every subsequent week. You can do this one of two ways. The long way is, going in, copying this, going to week 2, and pasting it in here. That's option 1, and you have to go back to week 1 and do the same thing for the next week. And again, it's not going to be too difficult because you can just do this on a week-by-week basis. The other option is this. You can take this one, sample week 2, you can delete it. You can go back to week 1. You can right-click. So again, down here at the folder tab, we can right-click this, and we can make a duplicate of this. And when we make that duplicate, it says copy of sample week 1. If we want to rename this week 2, we can right-click it, go to rename, and we can call this week 2. That's probably the faster way to do it, and that's the way that I would do it. Again, week 3 again doesn't have the right accommodation, so we can, when we get to week 3, we can delete this. Again, right-clicking it, deleting it, and then we go back to sample week 1. We can right-click it, duplicate it. It comes over right here to the right. It says copy of sample week 1. If we want to drag this over between week 2 and week 4, we left-click it and just drag it over. Now it's in the right place, and we can rename this week 3. And we're all set. So that's that piece. That should help you out a little bit to make sure that you're doing this successfully. The last thing is printing. If you did want to print a sheet, what I would recommend is I would highlight everything that you have here all the way down to there. Go to print, and there's options here. Current sheet, all sheets, selection. If you click selection, it's only going to print what you highlighted, and then you can click print, and now you don't have a bunch of wasted space on the document that you're printing.